So I believe that a lot of people, not everybody, but probably the vast majority of people, have a flawed way of thinking. I think it dates back to when we were roaming around the savannah and could get eaten by things, but it should influence the way that you trade any market, or perhaps even live the whole of your life. But let me discuss that in this video. Please like and comment on the video below. That will allow me to produce better quality videos and more of them in the future. If you're interested in learning to trade successfully on sports, then why not visit the BetAngel Academy, where we have more detailed videos. So let us imagine you're wandering through a savannah and you've got many things that could kill you. You hear a rustle in the bush and you've got to make a decision. So the decision is it food that you can club over the head and eat, or is it going to eat you? It's a very simple decision. It's a live or die decision. So what are you likely to do? This scenario describes how loss aversion comes around, because if, nowadays, if you injure yourself or something tries to eat you, you may recover from that scenario. But back in those days, if you make a wrong decision, you're doomed. And so the brain is fixated on loss aversion. You hear the rustle in the bush and you think, well, I'm just not going anywhere near the bush. You may be starving, but then the thing in the bush may be starving as well. So loss aversion is a well-described way of seeing how people make suboptimal decisions when it comes to losses, whether it's monetary, which is a fairly modern construct, or whether it's being eaten, which is a caveman construct. But loss aversion comes around because of that. So I was thinking about this, and I've read hundreds of books and made pages and pages of notes about many different things about neuroscience and the way that people think and stuff like that. And it dawned on me that decision about the rustle in the bush is a binary decision. It's a yes or a no decision. So it's like, should I proceed? Yes, no. And in fact, when you look at everything around you in the world, and especially with social media, the emotional part of your brain seems to come up with a yes-no response to pretty much everything. And it transgresses pretty much everything. You see a story on the news and your brain slides into a yes or no outcome. So it's like, oh, that's disgusting, I totally disagree with that. Or like, oh, why they, I don't agree with that. And you look at social media and, you probably see it, I ignore most of it. People post up all sorts of rubbish saying, I saw this news story and it provokes a yes-no response, an affirmative or a declined response, or reinforces their view or instantly rejects it. And in fact, you look at social media and watch, because you will see these yes-no responses all the time. Nobody sort of comes back with a response and say, well, I can understand where that's coming from, but perhaps we need to look at this as well. And the world seems to be dominated by binary responses. It's good, it's bad. They're going to win, they're going to lose. And yet the fact is, that is not how the world works. And if you go down to quantum mechanical level, you'll figure out that the world is not a yes-no place. It's a sort of maybe area. But you tend to find that there are many levels in between both of those possible responses, and those are the optimal responses. Now the trouble is, if you do that, you look indecisive, you look like you can't make a decision, and that doesn't fit in with the social conformity of the group around you or whatever. It makes you look wrong, but in fact you are right. And very often, I remember going back to my corporate world. Let me throw you an anecdote in from here. We sat down with the sales plan and they said, hey Peter, do you think you can hit this number next year? And I said, well, there's about a 70% chance that I will. And it's like, no, I was looking for a yes or a no. And it's like, okay, well, cut my quota by 50% and I will definitely do it. And it's like, I'm not going to cut your quota by 50%. It's like, okay, there's a 70% chance. And it's like, not acceptable. You've got to make a decision about whether you can do it or not. And now, of course, you then get forced into this dilemma of, if you say no, you'll get the sack, and if you say yes, you commit yourself to a target you can't possibly do, which is why I said 70%. Because I was looking down the list of things and I was sort of saying, well, if these guys do this and that happens and the sell-through is reasonably high and the factory manufactures enough on time and we manage to get this much through and there's no competitive action within the market, and these are all of the decisions that I'm making. But of course, typically most people don't want to deal with that. Most people can't deal with that. And in fact, I'd say that most people make their decisions on a binary basis. And I've seen this much more recently with people who are progressing from matched betting into trading, because in match betting it's an ABC type approach, whereas when trading it's an A plus B could or could not perhaps be C, or there's a 50% chance of it being C, or maybe an 80% chance, but it's not definitive. And I remember somebody talking to me about match betting, and they were saying, oh, so what's the best possible trade? And I said, well, I can give you the scenario where that would occur, and then you can sit and wait for it, but it's not going to occur. It'll occur maybe once in a month. And if you accept that you're going to lose 10% of the time, then it will occur more frequently. And if you accept it's going to occur 70% of the time, it occurs very frequently. If you accept that it's going to occur 55% of the time, then you'll see opportunities all over the place. I said to him, everything's a graduation in terms of, you can wait for the perfect trade. It is out there and it will come, but you may only see it once in a year. Or you can accept a lower strike rate and get more trades through the market more frequently. So, I've tried to optimize everything to the level where I've got the perfect or the near perfect position in the market based upon information that I've got in front of me, but I accept that it may not pay off. So I can see all of the shades of grey right in front of me, but most people don't do that. And this guy was sort of saying, oh, well, so you're saying that, you're only ever going to see, and I said, well, you asked for what was the perfect trade. There it is, and you're not going to find it very often. And, if you follow your simple rules, then you'll be able to find it, but you probably may miss it, or you won't be able to act on it, or you won't have, you wouldn't have built a bank up to have done anything sensible with it at that particular moment in time. And he said, well, surely there must be like an ABC. And I said to him, well, you'll get varying potential within a market. Your role as a trader is to work within that and to put some money in the market and try and get something out of it at the lowest possible risk. Your role, if you could tell precisely what was going to happen in a market, then you would be a multi-billionaire. But you can't. You can never say definitively that there's going to be a definite payoff at the end of it. But the problem is, I think this is another reason why trading is deemed pretty hard, because how do you go into a market where you don't know that you're going to get a payoff? And the fact is that ultimately that's what you do. But also, the more risk you take in a market, then you generally tend to get more reward. So how do you cope with that? You want to get more money out of a market, so you end up taking more risk. But by taking more risk, you become more conservative, which means that you can't take risk, and therefore you won't get the money out of the market. But yeah, look across everything that you see on a day-to-day basis. I think that there's a certain sense of enlightenment you get when you step outside of the world and you observe it from around. And what you'll find is this binary thinking everywhere. A headline doesn't say this person possibly could do this at some point in the future. The headline will be 10 foot of snow forecast for December. It's going to be a white Christmas to wipe out Christmas. And it's never sort of, oh, there's a 55% chance that we may get some heavy snowfall around that period. Because that's not interesting. That doesn't sell newspapers. It doesn't evoke emotional response. But in fact, that's the way that people think. That's the way that the world works. But in fact, to be an effective trader and risk taker, you need to look at something, think about it, and say, well, I think it's got a good chance of a payoff and it's got an acceptable risk, and therefore I'm going to give it a go. But you have to accept that you may be wrong. But the great thing is, when you hear that rustle in the bush, it's not going to bloody eat you.